Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome to the Kettering Conference Centre. We're here today at the launch of a new cross-party organisation to fight for our independence from the EU. It's called GO. GO brings together a group of people, organisations, individuals to promote the cause of leaving the EU and bringing it back democracy to the British people. The United Kingdom has a one-time opportunity to free itself from the undemocratic European Union, which has been imposed upon us all. Today, we have a superb lineup of speakers from across the political spectrum, with one common goal: to bring democracy back to the United Kingdom. Our speakers today, as never before, will explain to everyone in this hall and online why it is essential we vote to leave the undemocratic, failed project that is known as the European Union. I'm delighted to welcome Sammy Wilson, who has flown in from Northern Ireland, to be with us today. Sammy is the Democratic Unionist Party MP for East Antrim, and he will speak to us shortly. After Sammy, we have Tom Pursglove, Conservative Member of Parliament for Corby and East Northamptonshire. And Tom will explain a little more about GO and its crucial importance and give you the details about how you can get involved. Following Tom, we'll be addressed by a man who has been fighting for this referendum for more than 2 decades, and it's largely thanks to his efforts they were having this referendum at all. The leader of the United Kingdom Independence Party, Nigel Farage, MEP. Following Nigel, we'll have Kate Hoey MP, Labour Member of Parliament for Vauxhall. Kate is the founder. Kate is the founder member of GO, and Kate is also a member of Labour Leave and makes a very strong case for the UK leaving the EU. And we're very honoured to have Kate with us today. Following the speeches, I will chair a question and answer session during which you'll be able to ask the panel a number of questions about the UK leaving the EU. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to pass over to Philip Hollobone and yes, it is Philip Hollobone, yes, sorry. Philip Hollobone will do the further introductions. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you, Margot. My name is Philip Hollobone. I have the huge privilege of being the Member of Parliament for Kettering, and therefore the double privilege of saying to each and every one of you this afternoon, welcome to Kettering. Thank you for coming. Now, Kettering has been described as the most average town in the country. But we know it's a great place to live. And we also know that Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough, all of Northamptonshire really is Middle England at its best. And from Middle England, let's hope the voice goes out across the country that this is our one and only chance to get our country back. A man who has been fearless in defence of his country over many decades is our next speaker, Sammy Wilson, formerly Lord Mayor of Belfast, a member of the Legislative Assembly in Northern Ireland for donkey's years, and the Member of Parliament for East Antrim for the last 11 years, a man of huge courage and of huge vision. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a truly huge Middle England welcome to a man who's come all the way from Northern Ireland, Sammy Wilson.
can I thank Philip for that welcome this afternoon. It's nice to see. I thought maybe the chairman had mixed his name up because she didn't know whether it was Philip or Joseph with his coat of many colours. But they're colours which resonate well in my part of Northern Ireland, because we are proud to be British. We are proud. We have defied terrorist campaigns to remove us from Britain, and we will defy the European Union trying to shackle us as well. I'm not too sure why I was asked to start off today. Maybe it's because Ulster men are known for their penchant for saying no or for walking out. But I'm quite happy to say no to European interference, and I'm quite happy to see the UK take its opportunity in this referendum to walk out of an arrangement which is not good for our country. I don't know if you heard the story of the investment fund manager, the actor, and the former leader of the Conservative Party. You may think it's a bad joke, but actually it's not. It's a good story. Anyone who listened to Radio 4 yesterday morning, the interviewer, almost every person they had on, they tried to draw them on the issue of the referendum. And obviously to say something bad about the UK leaving. The investment fund manager said it wouldn't matter whether we left or not. Britain was strong enough to stand alone. Michael Caine said that he'd be voting no and getting out. And Michael Howard said he didn't see any chance of Europe being reformed anyway. And I'm glad that if there were 3 people on Radio 4 yesterday morning, there are 3,000 people in Kettering this afternoon who agree with that as well. And there are millions of people across the United Kingdom who want to take that opportunity. And as has been said, the referendum which will take place later on this year gives us the opportunity for the first time in a generation for the ordinary people of the United Kingdom to express their view and to exercise their opportunity to break free of the shackles of the European Union. For 40 years, our relationship with Europe has been decided by a small elite. Incompetent, national-hating, and wanting to have closer integration. But now is the opportunity for those people, businessmen who are sick and tired of being suffocated with European regulations, people from communities who have seen their community changed by wholesale immigration, people who are sick and tired of dipping into their pockets to pay for a European budget which is inefficient and in many cases corrupt, and people who have lost their jobs as a result of EU interference. Of course, there are those who would say that all we need to do is reform Europe. That's the Prime Minister's view. Well, he's going the wrong way about it. He promised us that he would be making huge demands from Europe. An end to the European Court of Justice interference in the role of Parliament. The final say for the UK Parliament on red tape. Control of our borders, and so the list went on. And what do we get? We got 4 anemic demands. And even those have been rejected by the elite of Europe. And, of course, they have no real reason why they should want to give in to it. After all, if you go into negotiations asking for little, you're going to get little. If you go into negotiations saying we don't want to leave, then what sanctions do you have? It's a bit like Jeremy Corbyn's submarines with no missiles. And of course, the Prime Minister knows he's not getting change. Those who support his campaign know they're not getting change. You and I know they're not getting change. And that leaves us with, and that leaves the pro-European cabal with a big problem. How do they persuade the many millions who are sceptical to join the campaign to stay within Europe? And in the absence of any good arguments, they have decided the baldrics, the pro-Brussels baldrics, have devised a cunning plan. And the cunning plan depends upon one thing: fear. Fear of change, fear of the future, fear of the consequences. I'm sure many millions of people over the next number of days will receive a leaflet through their doors from the British Stronger in Europe campaign. More like Britain Strangled by Europe campaign. Now, any of you who are observant will notice that I'm not holding up the said leaflet. I couldn't find a copy of it. I think the trading standards people have got to them first of all and decided that it's not to be circulated because, of course, if it was based on facts, then they couldn't make the argument. Tony Blair had a dodgy dossier before he entered the war in Iraq. I think that the leaflet that the Britain and Europe campaign has put forward would make Tony Blair's dodgy dossier look like a well-researched academic piece of work. But you know, that's what, and it's full of factual inaccuracies. It's full of lies. We'll pay £450 more for our shopping. Where did that wee gem come from? It came from the European Commission. Well, will you expect them to say any more? We'll all be £3,000 worse off each year. And the fact check and Channel 4 said that it was based on no evidence at all. 3 million jobs would be put at risk because we would lose our trade with Europe. Do we really think Europe is going to close its door on trade with Britain when we run a 60 billion trade deficit with Europe? They might be incompetent, but they're not stupid. They'll be quite happy to take it. And of course, if we leave Europe, we are going to find that our security is impaired. Well, I think if we look at the number of criminals who are allowed to stay in the UK because of European court judgments, we can see how inaccurate that is. Or how can our security be impaired when we have got the events we had in Paris, where a bunch of terrorists roamed in and out and through Europe like a bunch of jihadist nomads and were able to carry out their acts of atrocity. Folks, we have an opportunity to reverse the trend. And this referendum is a great leveller. It is no longer the great and the good, or the chattering classes, or the political elite, or any of those other groups who have so far dominated the debate who will be making the decision. It'll be the people of the United Kingdom. And every one of us have a duty to take this once in a lifetime and once in a generation opportunity, and to go out into the highways and the byways, the cities and the villages, the community centres and the town halls, the doorsteps of the nation, and tell people our time has come to loose ourselves from the shackles of a non-democratic, unaccountable, incompetent regime, and to have our destiny decided by those who we elect to Parliament and by the sovereign Parliament of the United Kingdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sammy, and I notice you sat at the far right. My name is Peter Bone. I'm Member of Parliament for Wellingborough and co-founder of Grassroots Out, or GO. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and I'm sorry that the roads were so difficult, but I'm glad everyone did get in. This may not go out on the BBC because the BBC said that they were stuck in traffic. Any excuse not to put on an anti-EU message. I have the great pleasure, and there may be a video about to appear, but I don't know. I have the great pleasure of introducing Tom Pursglove. He's the Conservative Member of Parliament for Corby and East North Hants. He was elected in 2015. He overturned a 7,500 majority and turned it into a 2,500 Conservative majority. And he did it by campaigning for 2 years on coming out of the EU and curbing immigration. And that message really resonates in Northamptonshire. Tom is the National Director of Stuff the Wind Farms. No, sorry, no, got that wrong. National Director of Together Against Wind, which is the umbrella group fighting against wind farms. Tom was the inspiration behind the Northamptonshire EU referendum, which we carried out in 2014, when 84% of the people in this area voted to leave the EU. It's my great pleasure now to introduce the youngest Conservative Member of Parliament, Tom Pursglove.
I've been recently campaigning a lot in East Northamptonshire with the excellent Conservative candidate for Corby, Tom Pursglove. Yeah. The number one issue on the doorstep is EU migration.
But the issue of the European Union and the UK's membership of it was something that came up time and time again on the doorsteps of Corby and East Northamptonshire. One of the key reasons for that is this issue of EU finance. It's the concern that local people have about British taxpayers' money being sent over to Brussels and then how that money is spent. What local people tell me very, very clearly is that they voted for a common market and not the political superstate that we see today.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here. Some of my props aren't on this lectern. Somebody has stolen my props, which are going to be valuable to the contribution that I'm going to make. I'm going to show you the leaflet shortly that Sammy alluded to, but which I haven't got in front of me. I'm not really sure what's happened here.
You'll have to do it without.
Well, we'll go without the props then. That's absolutely fine. One thing that people say to me all the time is that they're sick to death of politicians bickering on issues where they fundamentally agree. And that goes to the heart of what Grassroots Out is all about. That's exactly why Peter, Philip, I, Kate, Nigel, Sammy, we all agree on. We need to get past this bickering that we've seen in our political system over the years and that so many people feel so put off by. This is going to be a fundamentally important referendum to the future of our country. It is so, so, so important, and there are many reasons for that. Many, many good reasons why we should be leaving the European Union. And I just want to say a little bit about what GO is all about. GO is trying to get people in local communities to work together towards the end of getting us out of the European Union. And why is that so important? Because potentially we've got such a short amount of time in which to make the case. The referendum could happen as early as June. 20 weeks, just 20 weeks. I had 2 years to win in Corby and East Northamptonshire, and we need to work together and spread the message about why we should be leaving the EU superstate. And yes, people have had political differences over the years. They've had wranglings, they've had disagreements. But we need to put those things to one side and work together. So what is it? Well, what we're going to do in individual constituencies up and down the country is establish a task force. And what that task force is going to do, it's going to bring together people from different political parties. And it's also going to bring together people who are perhaps different members of different leave organisations into one structure. We're going to meet on a Saturday morning for an hour. We're going to talk about this referendum campaign. We're going to talk about the issues that matter in that referendum campaign. And then we're going to go out there, we're going to knock on doors, and we're going to go door by door and win this election vote by vote. And one thing that I know from my 2-year campaign in Corby and East Northamptonshire is how important campaign camaraderie is. By setting up Go branches, that's exactly what we're going to achieve. We're going to come together as one, we're going to get a great team spirit going, and we're going to win this referendum. How can you help? I know you're all thinking, how can I help? Well, on all of your seats is one of these cards. Please, please, please fill this card in before you leave and drop it in one of the boxes at the back of the hall. These cards are pledge cards, and on that you can specify ways in which you can help, many different ways. Some people will only be able to lend us their vote. Some people will be willing to go and knock on doors. Some people will be willing to put posters up. Let us know how you can help. And I also want to send an open invitation to everybody here, but also people beyond this hall this afternoon, to attend the first task force meeting that's going to happen in Wellingborough next Saturday. We're meeting at 10 o'clock at the Tithe Barn. Let's get as many people there as possible. I'd love to be in a situation where we can't fit everybody in the room because there's that much passion and that much determination to make it along. So why is all of this so critical? Why is this grassroots work so important? Well, I can tell you why it's so important. Because it's exactly that leaflet that Sammy alluded to. And mine hasn't been confiscated yet, I might add, although it was confiscated by one of you. I don't quite know what's going on. But it hasn't been confiscated by Trading Standards yet, but I'm sure they're on their way. And frankly, they'd be absolutely right to do so, because I have no beef at all with Europe. But what I do have beef with is the European Union. And we need to make that very, very clear. I was no fan of coalition. I was very much on the record as being a sceptic of coalition, but I understood why it took place. But one thing that used to frustrate me all the time was Nick Clegg saying that 3 million jobs would be lost if we were to leave the European Union. Simply not true. And it's claimed on this very leaflet. And Karen Brady's arguing on the front of this leaflet that Britain's economy is stronger in Europe. That's of very little comfort, I have to tell you, to steel workers up and down our country this week, including in my constituency. Simply put, the European Commission is not doing everything that it could be in order to tackle unfair, uncompetitive Chinese dumping of steel on the European market. It's unacceptable, it's got to stop. And we also need to get away from these dreadful state aid regulations that are making it more difficult for our industries, and particularly our steel industry, to compete. So, whilst I respect Karen, I have an enormous amount of respect for Karen, and I have to say I'm probably a fan of The Apprentice too. But my message to her is simple. She should be telling the European elite, you're fired. And there's wider national issues at play here too. The fact is that the free trade common market principles that many people voted for back in the 1970s have been abandoned in favour of a political superstate. We never voted for that in this country. That's what people in my constituency tell me all the time when I knock on their door. And I think that we could have a much better future outside of the European Union. We could be a global trading nation, much more global in our outlook, much more successful, able to negotiate our own trade deals, in a position where we could actually help developing countries properly by establishing market agreements with them. And we'd also be able to control immigration in a way that we're not able to now. That is a primary concern that my constituents have, and I visited a small business in my constituency before Christmas, employs 6 people. And one of those employees was a young man from New Zealand who'd come over, he'd been granted a visa, he'd been trained, he was a very important part of that team. But he couldn't stay because we couldn't get his visa renewed. And that's despite the fact that this company wants to expand, it wants to have more global operations. They were very, very keen to export to the New Zealand-Australian market, but because he wasn't from within the European Union, we couldn't get him a visa. I don't think that's fair. I think we need to have an immigration system in this country that is fair, regardless of where you come from in the world. Let me tell you, it's an enormous honour and a privilege to be a Member of Parliament. To stand up in the chamber, to be able to put a question to the Prime Minister of your great country is something that I never imagined just how special it would be until I had the opportunity to do that. I never forget how lucky I am to have been put there by my constituents and to have earned their trust to be elected last year. And that's exactly why I want to make our own laws in our own country that work in our national interest rather than having them dictated to us by Brussels. It's unacceptable. We can quite capably make our own laws that work in our national interest. I have to say, it was quite intimidating to follow the wisdom of Sammy Wilson in appearing on this platform afterwards and to appear before the fireworks of Farage. I was conscious that I had the slightly dry bit in presenting what Go is all about. But one thing I know is this, that we will win this referendum. That we will work together. And we will take our great country out of the European Union.
Thank you so much, Tom. It's nice to see a conviction politician so young, and it was also great fun to pinch his speaking notes as well. I would say that was a UKIP plot, but we're all working together now. So, it's now my great pleasure to introduce Kate Hoey, MP for Vauxhall. Now, Kate is one of those rare politicians that when a name goes up on the House of Commons annunciator, people go and listen. Some of my colleagues, the name goes up and we leave, but, you know. But Kate is one of those people who can stand up in the House of Commons. And the House goes quiet. And people from both sides listen to what she has to say. Because though Kate is Labour through and through, she will say what is right for our country all the time. And she's passionate about getting out of the European Union. Kate is co-founder of Labour Leave, which is the most amazing organisation which is battling up and down the country to get Labour supporters to turn out and vote in the referendum. And ladies and gentlemen, we cannot win this referendum without those supporters. And thank you so much to Labour Leave for what they're doing. She also, with Tom Pursglove and myself, are the founder members of Go, because we were just fed up at the lack of campaigning at grassroots that was going on when the referendum was so close. So thank you, Kate, for pitching in with 2 Conservative MPs. And finally, I just want to say that 27 years Kate has been in Parliament, which means she was first elected to Parliament when Tom was born. Ladies and gentlemen, Kate Hoey.
My point is that there is a very left-wing argument about why we should leave the EU. The idea that it's the European Union that has brought us all these social benefits and trade union rights, when we have seen recently what is happening in terms of Greece and the way that workers have been totally unprotected there. I do wish the people who want to stay would stop talking about Europe. Europe is a much bigger area. I love Europe. We're not anti-Europe. We're anti the European Union. We have huge support out there amongst Labour Party members at the grassroots and Labour supporters. This referendum will not be won to leave the EU by MPs. It's going to be the public who decide, and the last thing they want at the moment is these stitch-ups between politicians cosy at Westminster. Out in the country, the mood is very, very different.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Peter told me, I said to Peter, you've put me between 2 of the great orators in Sammy and Nigel. And he said, no, we put the Labour rose between the 2 thorns. So I'm genuinely delighted to be here today and have played my small part in setting up Go, and I want to congratulate Peter and Tom, who have done such a great job on this. Grassroots Out is really, really important. And today, this amazing gathering is the launch of Go, which we know will spread right across the country, because we have the most important vote coming up sometime in the next year or so, and that is to take our country back, as many people say, and to give us the opportunity, because the European Union Commission and the European Union bureaucrats wants to silence us. We're not going to be silenced. We're here and we're out there. Now, as I said on that little videotape, I love the European continent. I think everybody here does. We all love Europe. It's very interesting, isn't it, that the Remain campaign don't want to use the word EU. They use Europe all the time. And I've got this sort of vision of Peter Mandelson, or I don't know, one of the others who were involved and told us how wonderful it would be if we joined the European currency, the single currency. If we didn't join the euro, the country would fall to bits. That's the same sort of people who are telling us now that our country will be ruined if we chose to leave. And I've got this vision of sort of Peter Mandelson pulling the UK away from the continent of Europe. We love Europe, we dislike and we distrust the European Union. Now, as a Labour MP, and I know there are hundreds and hundreds of Labour supporters here today, as a Labour MP, I thought it was important just to look back to 1975, when we had the last and only opportunity to say anything about the common market as it was then. And when I look at the Labour stalwarts who were on those platforms, Labour figures like Michael Foot, Peter Shore, Tony Benn, Barbara Castle, you know, all of those, if they had been here today, would be here today, because all of those who were involved then were the true voice of Labour. And when we look back, and when we voted then, what was a very small 9 members of the common market, 40 years later, 28 countries with a bloated, undemocratic, unelected commission costing us £50 million a day, £350 million a week and £19 billion a year. I think we should all learn to be able to say that over and over and over again, because that is the cost of our membership of the EU. When we joined, the 9 members had 36% of the world's economy. Today, it is 17% and falling, literally, as we speak. The EU is a shrinking market, the only continent that's actually shrinking, where the economy is weakening. And in just one more set of figures, which I think are really important, in 2006, the European Union took 64% of UK exports. In 2014, it took 43% of our exports, shrinking as we speak. So who can say that by 2025 are we really saying that it's crucial for our exports? Our trade with the EU peaked in the early 90s, and now we have to look beyond that tiny protectionist bloc to the expanding, growing countries of Asia and South America, and crucially for me, build again those links with the Commonwealth, those countries. Those countries in Africa, in India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, who we so shamefully betrayed back in 1973. And those countries are, of course, much more culturally and historically best suited to trade with us and want to trade with us. Now, I mentioned New Zealand because, remember, Harold Wilson went off to renegotiate, and he came back with one thing, which he pretended was a lot more than it was, but he got the right to buy New Zealand butter. But, you know, that's actually, to me, is far more than the kind of paper symbolism that I'm afraid our Prime Minister will come back with in a very short time. Because what he is going for is meaningless negotiations so that he can come back and say he's won it. And as Sammy has already said, it is meaningless. So I believe that an exit would allow the UK to sell freely to the whole of the world, and it would allow also, very importantly, for less developed countries to sell freely to us, because the net effect of this would be to improve their standard of living, thus helping to remove the desire for their people to move to the UK, depleting their own human resources. So it is a win-win for everyone. And as things stand at the moment, and this is where I think it's very shameful for some in the Labour movement, because as things stand, the EU policy at the moment condemns many, many impoverished countries to a form of hopeless servitude that should have been consigned to history. And that is why I find one of many reasons why those on the left how they can possibly go out and be arguing that it's better to stay in the EU. But we will be told, and we're being told, that we are in a minority. I have to tell you that as we go around the country with Labour Leave, we are finding that people are coming out and saying, at last, within the Labour movement, there is some kind of debate. We're fed up with the Europhiles who've been running our party, and we want to change that. We're a very proud country. We've got the 5th largest economy in the world. We've got the 4th biggest military budget. We're a leading member of the G7, and we're one of the 5 veto-wielding members of the UN Security Council. Our language is the most spoken language in the world. We have some of the best universities in the world. So why do we think we have to be timid and stay hiding in a crowd of 28? How much bigger do we have to be before we realise that we don't have to invite the unelected EU commissioners to run our affairs and tell us how to spend our money? I often look at some of the things, I didn't agree with him on everything, but some of the things that Tony Benn said. And one of the things that struck me very much was when he said, as you know, he was always opposed to the European Union, and I'm sure if he was around today, he would be here as well. He said, when you're looking at any institution, and particularly the European Union, you ask, what power have you got? Where did you get it from? In whose interests do you exercise it? To whom are you accountable? And how can we get rid of you? And if you can't get rid of the people who are governing you, you do not live in a democratic system. And I just want to point out that as a Labour MP, I see the neoliberal agenda of the European Union as not protecting workers' rights, but threatening them. And if anyone needs an example of this, we just have to see what happened to the Greek people. The EU forced austerity on Greece while breaking the democratic will of the people who invented democracy. So not only has social Europe, once so beloved by many of the trade unions, it's been shown to be anti-social Europe by attacking the trade union rights across the member states, stopping collective bargaining, and it's the EU rules that are pushing privatising of ferry services in Scotland and pushing privatisation of state railways. The casualisation of labour is something that is coming about directly as a responsibility of the European Union. And TTIP, the Transatlantic Trade Partnership, we know is a way of the multinational corporations actually taking more control. And for anyone in Labour who is opposed to TTIP, and the trade unions who are opposed to TTIP, how they cannot see that opposing TTIP, there is a natural extension to opposing the EU, and that's the message that Labour Leave will be getting across to our members. The EU is a chain holding back all its member countries. Only the people can break that change, and that's where you are so important. Every single one of you has something to do over the next few months. It's no good just talking to ourselves. It's not enough just to be able to vote on that day. There are other things that you can do. And as I said, there's no point in just talking to us, all of us who are already convinced, and there's no point arguing anywhere about which is the best of the Leave campaigns. We all want to come out, and that's what Go is about, bringing everyone together to get that message out to the country. So, I'm conscious of my 10 minutes. So we have to be prepared to go out and argue our case. Every day we should wake up, every one of us, and say, what can I do today that will help convince someone else that they should be voting to leave when the referendum comes? We have to be prepared to put aside egos, put aside personalities, put aside things like who said what, when, and why. We have to get through all of that and build a united campaign across political parties and those who have no interest in politics whatsoever, and particularly those who have never voted before. Those are the people we are going to go out there and get supporting us. And when I see banks like Goldman Sachs giving huge amounts of money to the Remain campaign, I think people will remember just the role of the bankers in helping to almost destroy the economic systems in this country. We will have the whole establishment against us. We will have a cosy establishment of political parties against us. We will have, as I've said already, the bankers against us. We will have a huge media campaign. Some of the media have been extremely good. We still have a problem, I think, with the BBC. It's not just that they can't get here in time, but we are going to have to watch that and make sure that the campaign is allowed to be run in a way that is free and fair. We want a free and fair referendum. We don't want the establishment to belittle us and tell us that the United Kingdom is a weak country. We are a great country with the passion and energy to maintain our greatness, and we mustn't be frightened or conned into believing otherwise. We who believe in leaving the EU are not little Englanders. I'm certainly not. I'm a little Northern Irelander and delighted that we're going to have the European Football Championships with Northern Ireland, Wales and England all there in June, which I think is another reason he's not going to be able to have the referendum in June. But we are people who recognise that the future for the UK lies not in gazing ever inwards at the old European continent, but out into the wider world. So this is an issue far bigger than party politics. That's why I'm here today. It transcends the old left-right divide. If you want a United Kingdom that controls its own borders, makes its own laws, and is free to negotiate our trade deals to join, then you need to be out there to get the UK out of the EU. We have never been listened to before. We have never been asked. Now we're being asked. Let's sure we get that right result come the referendum. Thank you very much. Where am I going?
Thank you very much indeed, Kate, and thank you for coming all the way from Northern Ireland to this national launch. Corby, Kettering, Wellingborough, Northamptonshire, we know that we're very much the beating heart of the nation. And we, the real people of England, we have not yet spoken. But our voice will be heard in this referendum, along with voices from Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, to keep our own union, but to get us out of the European Union. One man who has, throughout his adulthood, campaigned on these principles is our next speaker. I first had the privilege of meeting Nigel Farage when we were both schoolboys together in southeast London 40 years ago. And I can tell you that the Nigel Farage today is still the Nigel Farage of 40 years ago. This man is nothing if not consistent. He's a genuine politician with real beliefs, and he says it as it is. And whether you're Labour, whether you're Conservative, Liberal Democrat, DUP, it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is, or if you don't have any political affiliation, all of us want politicians to say it as it is, for them to be truthful when they speak to people, to listen to what people's concerns are. And that's why I, as a Conservative MP, have absolutely no problem. Indeed, I'm hugely privileged to have been given this opportunity today to introduce to you our next speaker, Nigel Farage, the leader of the UK Independence Party, because all of us, no matter what party we come from or no party, are committed to working together to seize this one and only chance to get our country back. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Farage.
There is a gathering electoral storm. It's coming on the left, on the centre and on the right. Right across every member state in this union, and perhaps this is why we see the fear in the faces, increasingly people are saying, we don't want that flag, we don't want the anthem, we don't want this political class. What this initiative led by Peter, and I'm just a foot soldier, following and helping. What this initiative has done is there'll be 6 of us on the platform in Kettering in a couple of weeks' time. And it'll be the first of a big rolling series of meetings that are going to go right across the United Kingdom. And the question that I want to ask, that we're all going to ask is, who are you? I'd never heard of you. Nobody in Europe had ever heard of you. I'll share a platform with virtually anybody that believes we should get back our independence and self-government in this country. And I look forward to working with Conservative MPs, Conservative ministers, as indeed I want to work with Labour figures or Green figures or anybody across the political spectrum.
Well, thank you very much indeed. What a kind introduction from my old mate Philip Hollowbone. He's right. I haven't changed at all in 40 years. I was impossible then, and I'm implacable now, because I have spent 20 years of my life fighting and campaigning, standing in election after election, some with success, many with failure, but I've done it because I believed that this transfer of powers from our country from our Parliament, from our courts to these EU institutions is not what my mother and father voted for back in 1975. Not at all. And it is not a question that I have ever been asked. And I believe we should make our own laws in our own country. I believe we should control our own borders. I believe our courts are the ones that should be supreme. And I believe that the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves. So after 20 years of doing this, and at times being really pretty worried that I might finish up as the patron saint of lost causes, and it's been a pretty lonely old game, I can't tell you how long I've waited for this day. This means more to me than anything I've done in my political career. To be on this platform, with a group of people who recognise that actually party politics is meaningless compared to the importance of getting back the control of our nation. I'm proud to be here with all of them. To be here with a group of people who are putting country before party, a group of people who are putting conscience before career. To be here with a group of people at the start of what is going to be a massive public campaign that we're going to roll out across this country, and a group of people who recognise that this is so important that it's not about left or right, but it's about right or wrong. And we know what's right, and we must win this referendum. Now, we do, of course, have a fairly considerable enemy, by which I don't mean Brussels. I don't even mean Mr. Van Rompuy, although it's fair to say that I'm not on his Christmas card list. No, the enemy isn't Brussels. The enemy, as Kate said, isn't Europe. We're not against Europe. We love Europe. We're happy to go on holiday there. Some of us are happy to drink their wine. We buy and sell motor cars with each other. We love Europe. What we're against is the idea of all these different nation states being forced against their will into this straitjacket of one-size-fits-all administered by the bureaucrats of Brussels. And believe me, this meeting today, there will be tens of millions of people across Europe who see it on their national televisions and through the internet that will be cheering us on, because we have the honour to be the first country in this union to have the opportunity to say, we don't want political union. Friendship and free trade, but not this. And I think, in many ways, ironically, we are the true Europeans, because we recognise that a Europe of different countries, different cultures, different languages, different histories, different cheeses, that's a good Europe, provided it's democratic and it trades together. So I hope that when Britain does exit itself from this political union, that it's followed by the rest of Europe too. I look forward to a better, happier, freer Europe. Now, our enemies aren't in Brussels. Our enemies are in Westminster. Our enemies are indeed in parts of Canary Wharf. I'll come to him in a moment, sir. Just wait. Just wait. And what we're going to see over the next few months, paraded on television, are our political class. People who didn't tell us the truth back in 1975. People who told us that if we didn't join the euro, investment would dry up into this country. So we'll get a parade on television. We'll see Ken Clarke. That's not a bad start, actually. Try this one. We'll see Nick Clegg. We'll see Peter Mandelson. And top of the list, we'll see Tony Blair. And they'll be on television telling us we have to be part of this club, selling us the fear story. And the fear story is, if we're not part of this union, they will not buy our goods. All trade will cease. Jobs will be lost. That is what we're going to hear from them. And actually, do you know what? They may try to scare us. But actually, I think the common sense of British people is such that we understand just how many German motor cars are on our roads. We understand that they sell us more than we sell them. We're beginning to understand that we are the Eurozone's biggest trading partner in the world. I think we understand that actually they need us far more than we need them. Our campaign needs to be a positive one. Our campaign needs to be on the basis that actually the reason they've given all this power away, and I saw this face to face when I debated with Nick Clegg in 2014, and we were talking about trade, and Nick said we have to be part of this big EU club to negotiate trade deals. Britain on its own simply isn't big enough. And I responded by saying that Iceland, with a population of 320,000 people, had just signed a trade deal with China. I was damn certain if Iceland was big enough, then the United Kingdom was big enough to negotiate its own trade deals. But actually, I realised at that moment something that I perhaps hadn't seen as fully and as clearly before. And we'll see it on those TV sets when we see Clark and Clegg and Mandelson and Blair, and we'll hear it from the Prime Minister. What they mean, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that we're not big enough. They don't think we're good enough to run our own country. What, do you think we're good enough to run our own country? Well, I think we're good enough to run our own country, because I believe in Britain. I believe in the British people. I know that freed from this club, not only will we have a simple trade deal with Europe, but we'll be able to re-engage on the world stage and make our own trade deals with whomsoever we choose. And wouldn't it make sense that a very good first port of call would be a group of countries within whom there are 2.2 billion people, where English is the primary language, where they have common law, where they actually like us, and let's re-engage with our friends in the Commonwealth. Wouldn't that make sense? And politically, we'll be better off out, because think of this. Every single European law that is made, and anybody in this room who's part of the 5 million small businessmen and businesswomen will know what I'm talking about. It's not that every single law that Brussels makes is balmy. Some of them are probably quite sensible. But whether they're good pieces of law or whether they're bad pieces of law, there is nothing the British government, there is nothing our 651 MPs, there is nothing all of you can do to change a single piece of European legislation, because the sole right to propose law and the sole right to repeal law rests with the unelected European Commission. You cannot be an independent, self-governing nation and a member of this European Union, and I'm sorry, but I believe that those that went before us, and twice in the 20th century, risked or sacrificed everything they had. They did it so that we could be a free, independent democracy, and I want that back. So we'll be better off economically, able to make our own trade deals, not squandering over £50 million a day as a contribution. We could build a new district hospital every week in this country for the cost of our EU contributions. I know which I'd prefer, and I'm sure you do too. But crucially, absolutely crucially, the key issue that I believe will win us this referendum is the fact that as a member of this union, we now have an open door to nearly 500 million people, any of whom can come into our country. Now, the levels of immigration into Britain have been too high. Governments have promised they would control it to tens of thousands a year. We know net migration is running at 1/3 a year. And that's if you believe the official figures, which incidentally I don't. Too many people coming into a country too quickly has driven down the wages for ordinary workers in Britain. Has put intolerable pressure on primary school places, the health service, all of our vital public services. But what it's also done is to change many communities in our market towns and in even our cities in a way that is unrecognisable. If immigration is to work, it has to be at a rate and a level whereby people speak the same language and can integrate. And we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that as members of the European Union. So only by leaving this European Union, only by leaving this political union, can we take back control of our borders. And once we've done that, we can then put in place an Australian-style point system so that we can decide who comes to Britain. And yes, we want good people. We want skilled people. We want people to come who bring their own health insurance. We want people to come who haven't got criminal records, but we need to control the numbers. But I think it's now even more serious than that. 2 of those Paris murderers got back into the European Union posing as migrants coming through the Greek islands. The best way to ensure ourselves against future terrorism is to take back control of our borders. And I don't know about you, but I think what we saw happening on New Year's Eve in Cologne was genuinely shocking. Now, there's no room for complacency here. We know that in this country, dreadful things have taken place in towns like Rotherham. But perhaps to see what was happening with 1,000 young men in public sexually molesting women in the street, I think was a very great shock. And the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that the European Union has made a massive, massive error with its open door policy to anyone that wants to come. An error compounded hideously by Angela Merkel. But bear this in mind. Those 1,000 young men outside Cologne train station on New Year's Eve will in 3 to 4 years all have German passports, which means they'll be able to come to our country. And I'm sorry, I'm a great believer in helping those around the world in need, but it's time to put the interests of men and women and our communities first, and we only do that by taking back control. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Against us, there'll be Goldman Sachs. Against us, there'll be most of our political class and sections of the media. But I don't really care how many big banks and big politicians are against us, because this campaign, it's perfectly clear, it is people against the politicians. It is the people of this country that need to rise up. It is the people of this country. It is the people of this country that need to take back that's given away. Our politicians never had the authority to give away this amount of power. Our politicians have handed us over to an organisation with a flag and an anthem and a police force and an organisation that intends to build its own army. Our politicians have literally given away our country, and I want my country back. In fact, I'd say, can I speak for you? Can I speak for you? And can I say, we want our country back? Why don't you say it with me? We want our country back. One more time. We want our country back. Thank you. I'll introduce Liam, yeah? All right. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. I'll introduce Liam. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for that, and thank you for struggling through the traffic to get here. They say the public meeting is dead. I think today proves quite the reverse of that. Now, all the speakers that were advertised have turned up and spoken. But I might just have one more speaker for you. One little surprise up our sleeve. Are you ready to welcome another guest? Yes. Well, I'm pleased because we've got a big hitter about to come on the platform. We've got a man coming on the platform, a former chairman of the Conservative Party, a former contender for the Conservative Party leadership, a former Defence Secretary, and I think one of the most important people in the whole of this referendum campaign. Can you please give a huge welcome to Liam Fox? There's a seat for me over there. The more programmes come through.
That's great stuff. Well, good afternoon, and I'm sorry to detain you further. It's been a long time coming, but it's going to be worth it. It is wonderful for me to be here with so many of the colleagues that I admire so much. I am proud, I'm honoured, I'm humbled. That's not a word you hear often from politicians. It does happen from time to time. But we are all part of the Leave family. And I have read so much rubbish about division in the Leave campaign over recent days. We may have different personalities, we may have different voices, we may be speaking to slightly different constituencies. But like a family, all of us here today, on the platform and you with us, we like a family know what we want to defend. And we all know what we want for our country. So let me tell you, I would much rather be here today with all of you, the grassroots promoting optimism and freedom, than I would on a platform with the Goldman Sachs funded pro-EU establishment peddling fear to the people of our country. For all the time that I've been in the House of Commons, which is almost a quarter of a century now, yes, you are very kind, thank you. I was very young. All the time I've been in the House of Commons, I've been listening to the same refrain. Never mind, Liam, Europe is coming our way. You don't have to worry about it. It is the greatest lie in our politics. The European Union is not coming our way. For all the noises that are being made on the other side of the channel at the moment during the Prime Minister's renegotiation, they still have ever closer union as a religion. That is exactly where they intend to go, irrespective of what they tell us during this referendum. If you want one example of it, look what's happening with the European Border Force at the current time. Under the Commission, deployed by the Commission, even against the wishes of sovereign governments. What more proof do you need about the direction of travel that they intend to take? It is very clear that the European Union has no intention of fundamentally reforming itself. Let me tell you as a doctor, ever closer union is in their DNA, and there is nothing they can do to change it. And the very best that the Prime Minister can get in this renegotiation is better membership of the wrong club. It is not worthless, but it is not a reason to stay in the European Union. What do I want? Well, I think it's probably what you want. It's the ability of our friends and partners and cousins in the United States and Canada and Australia and beyond to be able to make their own laws, to control their own borders, to set their own destiny. Because I tell you, if you cannot make your own laws, if you cannot control your own borders, you are not an independent, sovereign nation. And I want to live in an independent, sovereign nation. Now let me just turn, if I may, to that very subtly named Project Fear. It's amazing that no one on the Remain side of this campaign is willing to talk about the European project. No one is willing to defend the concept of supranationality. It is all about fear and trying to say why you shouldn't want to leave. So let me just run through one or two of the things that they're telling you and why they are so fundamentally wrong. The first thing is they say our security would be at risk if we left the European Union. Let me tell you, as a former Defence Secretary, our security does not lie in the European Union. The cornerstone of our security is NATO. It is NATO that has kept the peace in Europe since World War II. And why is that so important? Because NATO brings into our security the United States and Canada and Norway and Turkey, countries which are so important for the wider geographical European security. And let's just remember that not only does NATO have 900 million people in it, compared to the EU's 500 million, but the United States defense budget is bigger than the next 11 defense budgets all combined. And that's Russia and China and Britain and France and Saudi and all the rest. And I know who I would rather place my security with. And in any case, no one's ever told me how you get a security relationship with the European Union when 5 of its members are neutral. No, the EU is not the cornerstone of our security. But I can tell you where insecurity may come from in the European Union. It comes from the permanently and fundamentally flawed Euro project that causes instability on the financial markets, that results in economic crises and bank bailouts and an ever-increasing British contribution, because remember, the worse that the Eurozone does, the more Britain has to contribute into European funds. We pay indirectly, in fact directly, for the failure of the Euro project. And I will tell you also that insecurity for our country comes from open borders and uncontrolled migration. And I do not want the mistakes made by Angela Merkel in opening the doors to migrants in Germany to be reflected in Britain's security. Because Germany has discovered in Cologne and in other places exactly what it can mean when you do not know who you have allowed into your country. And within a short time, when they are granted citizenship in any of the European countries that they have entered, they will have the right to enter the United Kingdom if we remain a member of the European Union. That, for me, is the real security issue at risk in this referendum. So the next thing that they want to peddle is that if Britain leaves the European Union, it will become isolated. Listen to how many times they use that word, isolated in the world. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? But the day after we vote to leave, will we not still have a seat on the Security Council in the UN? Yes. Will we not still be at the heart of NATO? Yes. Will we not have a special relationship with the United States? Will we not be at the center of the Commonwealth? Will we not still be in the G7? Will we not still be in the G20? Will we not be a country increasing our trade with the rest of the world outside the European Union? Does that sound like isolated to any of you in this room? This country has never been isolated, but what we have been is proud and independent and free. And it's because of our pride and our independence and our freedom, we were able to save the European continent twice in the 20th century from their own folly. So never let anyone tell us we will be isolated in this world. And the third of the worst of the many fables that they're pushing in this referendum is in relation to the Union. Now, I feel I can say something about the Union. As a Scotsman with an Irish name and an English constituency that overlooks Wales, I feel I've got some credentials on this. But it does worry me when I hear people who I have respected for a long time say that we must remain in the European Union or the United Kingdom will break apart. In other words, what they're saying is we must take whatever the European Union tells us we must take, or the SNP will have a referendum all over again. It is utterly disingenuous to pretend that the Union is safe simply because we remain in the European Union. Every one of us here knows that the SNP will try to have another referendum on independence at the first possible opportunity. And if we remain, what we can end up is the worst of both worlds. And that is what we must make sure we do not get. Ladies and gentlemen, people from all walks of life in our country want now to reclaim their birthright, to govern their own country, to make their own laws, to determine their own destiny. I didn't give up my job as a family doctor to go to Westminster to see it play second fiddle to Brussels and the European Court. When I gave up my medical career, I didn't expect to see a British Prime Minister have to take the political begging bowl round the capitals of Europe just to change our own benefit laws in our own country. It makes me sad, as I imagine it makes you sad. It makes me angry, as I imagine it makes you angry. But above all, it should make us want to make a change. It is time to look forwards and outwards with hope and optimism. We don't want to be little Europeans, but to embrace the wider world with all the opportunities that it offers in the era ahead. It is now time to take control of our own destiny, time to take control of our own laws, time to take control of our own borders. We will only get one chance, but we can do it. All of us, together. So let's get to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have some questions that have been submitted, so I'm going to pose them to members of the panel. The first question I'm going to direct to Kate. Kate, why do you think people in the Labour movement especially keep supporting EU membership? Kate.
I think it's very important that we actually look at what the reality is. And the reality is that those at the top of the Labour Party for many years, since the end of the kind of Kinnock era and into then the Tony Blair era, were very, very pro-EU. And to be honest, in the last 15 years, 20 years, there's been no debate within our party at all about what is good or bad or what should be changed. One of the things in the EU, one of the things that really upset those of us in the Labour Leave campaign, which is co-chaired by Kelvin Hopkins, the Luton MP, and Graham Stringer, who former leader of Manchester City Council, and a number of other MPs, but is that Labour didn't even want to discuss what we wanted to reform. They just kept saying, oh, we must stay in, we need reform, but never said what they wanted to reform, and then when pushed would say, well, we want to stay in whatever happens, we need to stay in. And a lot of it was to do with the attacks that came at part sometimes during the Prime Minister Thatcher's era in terms of what was happening with the trade unions. And the trade unions saw the European Union as a sort of way of trying to protect a lot of the workers' rights and so on. That has changed so much, and there is a fundamental shift coming within the grassroots of our party and within Labour supporters, but it's not there at the top. And one of the saddest things, and I know this is a very small room and we can, you know, everything you say here is private. One of the things that has been quite sad to those of us, particularly someone like Kelvin Hopkins, who actually nominated Jeremy Corbyn, is that Jeremy was always in the lobby. Both Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell were always in the small number of Labour MPs who over the years fought for a referendum and voted against the various treaties. So I'm still a little bit hopeful that some of the leadership, the top leadership of the party, will change its attitude. We certainly want to have the same situation as the Conservatives in terms of free votes for shadow cabinet members. And I just think, I would say that, you know, watch this space. I think you'll see quite a shift happening within the Labour Party and certainly at the grassroots.
Thank you, Kate. I've got a question here for Sammy. People are concerned as to whether or not we can realistically win this referendum. That is to say, is it going to be a stitch-up? And do we have the resources to take on the entire European establishment? Sammy?
Well, I think that first of all we've got to recognise that the kind of political elite, financial elite, who have always been the main supporters of the European project, are going to fight back. I think they fear that for the first time the ordinary people of the United Kingdom are now going to have the opportunity to have the final say on this. And all kinds of arguments are going to be deployed. I know that in Northern Ireland, one of the big things, I did an interview on Radio Ulster on Thursday, and one of the big things that they're going to play on is that outside the European Union, we are going to be economically disadvantaged. And you've heard it already from the Prime Minister's chief propagandist now, Nick Herbert, there this week. You know, we're going to be taking a jump into the void, he says. Well, I must say, I'm quite happy to jump into that void, because at the bottom of it there's a nice big cushion stuffed with about £18 billion that we give to the European Union every year, and we'll have a soft landing. But that's what we're up against. And it's one of the reasons I do think that people are sick and tired. All the speakers today have rehearsed the arguments. They're sick and tired of uncontrolled immigration. Now, don't forget, a lot of the decisions that have been made which affect ordinary lives, whether it's steel jobs, fishing jobs, the impact on communities of uncontrolled immigration, the uncontrolled spending and the contributions that we have to make, the impact on businesses, all of those are made by people who don't live with the consequences. For the first time, the people who live with the consequences of decisions made through the European Union are going to have their say. And that's why I think it is important for all of us. I believe we can win this campaign. But I believe that it's important that we do not take it for granted that people will come out and vote. I think that underlying amongst the people of the United Kingdom is a desire to be free of all of this. And it's up to us to get the message over. And while you might have very, very powerful people on one side, don't forget there's a lot of scepticism now about the political elite, about the financial elite, about the European bureaucrats. And let's play on that cynicism, that scepticism. Let's get the message over that they can use fear all they want, and it's the only tactic they have. Facts are on our side. We know what the impact has been, and that's why it is important to get out into the doors and knock and talk to people, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbours and everything else. We need their votes.
Thank you, Sammy. I've got a question here for Peter. Peter, the media is going to continue to try to fracture the Out campaign. It's obvious from now how they're reporting on us. What can be done to counter this narrative?
Well, thank you, Margot. And that's a really difficult question. I assume that was submitted by Mrs. Bone. The truth of the matter is we're going to win this campaign at grassroots level through the media. It's not going to be what's reported nationally. It's going to be what's reported in the Northampton Telegraph, the Herald and Post, or on radio, Connect FM or Heart, or on the local, regional TV stations. That's where people get actually most of their news. And they want to know how the European Union affects them locally and what the benefits of coming out are to them locally. And we will win it vote by vote across each constituency in this land, and we will not worry what is being said in the Westminster bubble. Now, I actually think that the media as a whole, with one exception, will give us a decent shout. And I think that whether you're ITV, Channel 4, Sky, we'll have our say. But there's one organisation that is institutionally biased in favour of the EU, and that, of course, is the BBC. And we just have to accept that fact. It'll be very interesting when we see the news reports tonight of this meeting, what the BBC are saying about it. We are a united grassroots organisation putting party politics to one side to campaign to get out of the EU. That's what the BBC should be reporting. But we will win it vote by vote in every constituency in the land.
Thank you, Peter. Terrific answer. My next question is for Nigel. David Cameron in December said that he expected to be done with negotiations by February. At the World Economic Forum this week, he said he's in no rush. And he's indicated that we might not get a referendum until late 2017. What's going on, Nigel?
Well, he's playing a game, isn't he? And I think that by saying this week, well, if we don't get what we want, we're in no particular rush, that makes it all the much better, doesn't it, for him to come back on the 19th of February, after the summit, Margot, saying, you know, I've pulled this extraordinary rabbit out of the hat, and he's going to fly back into London, and I'm told they're going to reopen Heston Airport for him, and he may even wear a Homburg hat, and he'll stand there, you see, and he'll say, I've got this most amazing deal with Europe. And actually, do you know what? It won't be worth a row of beans, because even if he's got some concessions on migrant benefits, the point is, and Liam made it, every single day, Brussels are centralising power. Every single day, every directive, every regulation that gets passed adds to the centralised power of Brussels. He isn't even renegotiating freedom of movement. He isn't even renegotiating the ability of the British Parliament to veto bad law. So he's basically asked for nothing, he will get nothing, he will then try and pull the wool over our eyes, and I think the difference between 1975 and now is this. I think my parents' generation and my grandparents, who were voting in that referendum, whether they were one side of the argument or the other when it came to voting in general elections, basically believed that our political leaders would do things that were in the interests of this country. There was a level of deference towards our political leaders, and I think that has broken down fundamentally over the course of the last 40 years, and I think now people are ready to trust their own instincts. And I hope so, because if they do, we'll win this referendum handsomely.
Thank you, Nigel. A question for Liam. What efforts are being made to get indications from around the world to skewer the in-campaign narrative? What would be alone in the world? Would we be alone in the world if we left the EU? Breitbart reported Jeb Bush back to sovereign Britain trading with America. Will anyone else back that, Liam?
Well, as I said earlier, this whole idea that we would be isolated is complete nonsense. We are at the centre of so many global organisations. We are key, in fact, to the functioning of so many global organisations that they require us to continue to play a part. And I actually think it will backfire if people from overseas try to tell the British people what they ought to do in relation to this referendum. And I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, but the current President of the United States, when he tells us that Britain should remain in the EU, well, when the United States has an open border with Mexico and they have a court that can overrule the Supreme Court in the United States, maybe then they can start giving us some advice, but not until then.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry that we've overrun, but before we finish, we've got a couple of things to do. I need to thank some people here. We've got some, well, there are 41 Leave organisations campaigning to come out of the EU, and I thank them all. But we've got some of their representatives here today. We've got Rory from the Freedom Association and Better Off Out, which have worked for so many years to get us out of the EU. We've got representatives from the Campaign for an Independent Britain, who are doing exactly what they say they're doing, a campaign for an independent Britain, and thank them. Somewhere hiding in the audience is Brendan from Labour Leave, and we really appreciate what you're doing. Also hiding somewhere, because he's a very shy person, is Aaron Banks from Leave.eu, and I'm very, very grateful for the help of all of those, especially Aaron in this event today. Thank you so much. I'm going to hand over to Philip because we've got one more thing that we want everyone to do. Philip.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Peter. And I want to say, as the local MP, thank you for giving up your afternoon to come here to be at the national launch of Grassroots Out. In years to come, people will ask you, which way did you vote in the 2016 referendum? And you can say, very proudly, with a warm glow in your heart, I voted to leave, and I was at the national launch of the campaign to get us out of the European Union in Kettering. And as Nigel Farage said, ladies and gentlemen, this is your election to win. Trust your instincts. You are right in wanting us to leave the European Union. And all of us at the top here, we're going to sign the Kettering Declaration. And here it is, and this is what it says. We, the undersigned, declare that in the weeks and months ahead, we shall set aside party politics and work together towards our common goal of a free and prosperous United Kingdom outside the European Union, engaged with the wider world and governed by its own laws. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our country. Let's get it back.
I better sign it. I need to close it. Okay. Can I do that now? Okay. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen. Okay. I know you are. I know you are. Safe journey. Are we closing? Hello, sorry, I've got to close the speech. Okay, sit on. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, I'd like to extend thanks to the panel, who are very busy signing this paper. The Leave argument has been empowered by tremendous speeches this afternoon. I hope you will agree with me. You've heard some terrific speeches from people who believe in Britain. We do believe in Britain, and we believe we can prosper in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Our task to share the belief with every voter, and every one of you, please take that message home with you and onwards, please. A safe journey home, and thank you so much for coming.